Chapter 18. Where is he? Anne hadn't even heard herself scream the question. The rage that set her every limb aflame left her blind and unthinking. She wanted to tear the Carse apart. She wanted to turn every hideous Dreadwillow tree from here to Emberfell into kindling. All this time she'd been coming here for answers, hoping they would lead her to her father's release. No wonder Janiah couldn't find Anne's father. He'd been hidden in the one place the princess could never look. With a war cry, Anne swung the crutch back and forth like a Sith, missing Pirip and Tally by scant inches. The imps cried out and scrambled about, zigzagging as Anne swatted at them. Anne could barely speak. She wrapped the purple ribbon so tightly around her hand the purple ribbon tore. With a burst of anger she struck the oozing earth with the crutch. "He's here! My father's here somewhere! Take me to him!" Pirip hid behind Tally and held her hands over her eyes, as though that would prevent Anne from seeing her. Tally tried to burrow into the ground. "We do not know the he!" Pirip wailed. "We do not know the he!" Tally, unable to hide herself in the mud, started crying. "We serve the Highness! We guide the Highness! Pity Tally and Pirip! Pity us!" Anne looked around wildly. If her father was here, then it was likely the Crimson Hoods were as well, and she refused to believe the imps hadn't seen any of them. Over the sniveling of the imps, the slow, wordless waltz continued. "Whoever that is singing," Anne said, "take me to them. Take me to them right now." Pirip and Tally huddled close and whispered back and forth. Then Pirip stepped forward cautiously. "The Highness has much to see and learn in the Carse. Later. Tally and Pirip will take the Highness later." Anne picked up the crutch and held it over her head as if ready to strike. Pirip ducked and whined. "Now! Now! Tally and Pirip will take the Highness now!" Muttering, the imps waddled down the left path. Anne followed closely behind, keeping them at bay with her father's crutch. The farther they traveled, the louder the singing got. The waltz no longer seemed to come from everywhere. They were clearly headed straight for the source. Please be with my father, Anne thought. That singing had always brought her comfort in the Carse, and she knew, deep down, that if her father was with the singer, he would be safe. She suddenly remembered to check the hourglass. Glancing at her waist, she found the bottom bulb had shattered. Probably when she'd been swinging the crutch, she had no idea how long she'd been in the Carse. Anne held up her hands. Gray skin, black warts, and her fingers were starting to look like talons. It didn't matter any more. She was too close. She couldn't turn back now. The trail grew more and more narrow. At last, it stopped in front of a wall of briar and thistle that rose up out of the swamp, twisting around itself like a wooden lightning. The barbs were as big as Anne. Monstrous vines reached up and up, threatening to choke the blackening sky itself. The wall stretched as far as she could see in either direction. There was no going around it. "As the Highness wishes," Pirip said, bowing awkwardly. She and Tally stepped aside to allow Anne to approach. The girl studied the briar. The points on the thorns glistened like glass. She assumed they were poisonous. "What I want is behind this wall." "Yes?" Anne picked up a fallen dreadwillow branch and poked at the briar. The thorns sliced the stick into splinters. "Everything the Highness wants is there," Tally confirmed. "Is there a way through?" Anne could hear the singing louder than ever. It was definitely coming from the other side of the briar wall, but she could see no opening, and the thorns would easily impale her if she got too close. "Tell me how." But when she looked down to her guides, their mischievous, helpful faces were gone. The imps had inflated to nearly twice their size. They reminded Anne of a cat that had arched its back in preparation for a fight. "She is not the Highness." Pirip, who had always been the more polite of the pair, had changed her tone sharply. Her bulbous eyes glared murderously at Anne. Anne stumbled. The bravery she felt swinging the crutch around drained away as both imps advanced slowly, dangerously. "She is not the Highness," Tally agreed, baring razor-sharp teeth. Anne quickly pulled out the royal crest. "You have seen this," she said, trying to sound regal. "It didn't work. You know who I am." The heart of the Cars always opens for the Highness, Tally said. It has always opened for every Highness. You are not the Highness. Anne felt her stomach drop. What do you mean it has always opened for every Highness? She asked, trying not to buy time. No monarch has ever been inside the Cars. But the imps wouldn't be distracted. With a growl, Pyrap lurched forward, snapping with her jaw and biting off the end of the crutch. Told you it was for eating, Tally said. Anne withdrew slowly as the hungry imps bore down. Behind her she could sense the wicked thorns of the briar wall. She had nowhere to run. This is the heart of the Cars, she thought. That was what Tally had called it. Not just the center, the heart. This is where the Cars kept the misery and woe it collected, and that was what was going to save her now. She knew what it wanted. The Cars wanted the greatest sadness Anne knew. It needed her to share the one sorrow she had sworn never, ever to share. She thought back to the first encounter with Pyrap and Tally. She told them the story of Jania's losing her mother. The only way out now was to tell her own story. Once, Anne said, there was a broken girl who had a secret. The imps froze. Their eyes gleamed. The creatures, like the Cars, craved sadness. They were about to get a feast. For most of her life she hadn't known she was broken. When she found out, she suddenly had a secret. But the fact that she was broken was not the secret. The girl's secret was her mother. Everyone knew the girl's mother. She was the happy woman whose glass-blowing skills were second to none in all the land. She was the generous woman who cared for the sick and never took a single coin in payment. In many ways, the girl's mother was the heart of their community. The girl loved her mother deeply. The mother called her daughter Rose Blossom. When she taught the girl to blow glass, she would say, "The hourglass must be perfectly formed, Rose Blossom." And even when the girl got it wrong, her mother would give her a hug and say, "Your next hourglass will be perfect." The girl and her mother lived with the girl's father, a kind, gentle man who was blinded by his own happiness. At least that was how the mother described him. But she loved her husband despite this. She maybe even loved him because of this, because happy was something the mother, it seemed, could never really be. One day, when the girl was very young, she found her mother in a corner of the kitchen. The mother sat with her back to the wall, tears rolling down her face. The little girl had never seen anyone cry before. The sight lit an infant flame inside her. She couldn't help it. She started crying too. Mother and daughter held each other and cried. "You must never tell anyone," the mother said when they finished. "This is just for us to share. If we keep this to ourselves, I'll tell you things no one else knows. I'll share with you my greatest secret." And each night as she tucked the girl into bed, the mother would teach her daughter secret words. "There is a language," she told the girl, "that was lost a long time ago. There are words that people use, but their meaning has faded. There are words you need to know. My mother taught me, and now I will teach you." That was how the girl came to understand sadness and grief and dread, a word used often by everyone, but understood by none. Alone in the girl's room, mother and daughter spoke their own private language, forgotten words of sorrow that brought them happiness to share. And when the girl was older, the mother fulfilled her promise to share her greatest secret. At the edge of the town where they lived sat a dark copse, a wood so murky it seemed to feed on darkness and woe. The mother took her daughter to see the woods. "When I feel sad, and I don't want anyone else to see, I go in there," the mother said, pointing to the woods. "You are too young to go in, but when the time is right, I will take you there with me, Rose Blossom." The young girl agreed to keep the secret. Each night she dreamt about the day her mother would finally take her into the woods where she could feel less broken. This went on for years. The girl watched her mother return renewed from the darkened copse. This, the mother said, gave her the strength to be happy. It was the strength she dearly needed in a land where joy was all around. Each time she returned, the mother promised to take the girl inside once she was old enough. Late one evening, the mother roused the girl from a deep sleep. The girl, her mind hazy and heavy with dreams, knew immediately her mother had been to the dark copse that night. Usually her mother returned calmer with the strength to hide her sadness, but not this time. Something was different. The mother held the girl close and ran her fingers through her daughter's hair. The girl was still tired and almost fell asleep as her mother rocked her gently. Her mother's words washed over her like a distant song. "Rose Blossom," the mother said, "I must go away. Far, far from the Carse, from the monarchy, and from you. I cannot stay. In many ways I hope some day you will understand why. In other ways I pray you never do. There are things I've seen that have changed everything. I know now who I really am and who I can never be." The girl didn't understand. It seemed like a riddle. As she drifted off to sleep in her mother's arms, she told herself to ask her mother about the answer in the morning. But when the little girl woke, her mother was truly gone. The girl never saw her mother again. She never found out where her mother had gone, or why. She knew only that her mother had seen something so terrifying, so horrific, so unspeakable, that her only choice was to leave the land that brought everyone so much happiness, and never return. Not a single person noticed the mother had gone. The girl was helpless as everyone around her, the people of her town, her own father, quietly erased the mother from their lives in the name of being happy. It stung the girl to see how little it took for them to forget this woman they claimed to love, but the girl would never forget. She felt more broken than ever. She asked herself over and over, why couldn't her mother have taken the girl with her when she went? Why couldn't they have left and been broken together? Anne's throat felt raw. Her eyes burned. She suddenly felt very, very tired. More than anything, she didn't want to say another word. Pirrip and Teddy lay still, monstrous grins in their faces. They reminded Anne of her father, resting with contentment after a large, satisfying meal. They wouldn't be attacking any time soon. Safe, she sank to the ground and waited for the Carse to respond. Nearby, a twig snapped. Then another. Then 1,000 more snaps crackled, echoing off the trees and filling the air. The great, tangled vines of briar began to move. They coiled and recoiled like a nest of serpents. Anne stepped back as a hole formed in the wall, the briar parting just enough for her to enter. Fingers wrapping around the royal crest in her pocket, she ducked down and passed through. Behind her, Anne could hear the vines racing back into place. The hole was gone. She was cut off on her own in the heart of Dreadwillow Carse. And that is the end of chapter 18.